Dear friends, welcome to yet another installment of Strategic Power. Russia is going through a particularly difficult time, and the actions of the country's leader are further complicating matters. After the ISIS attack in Moscow, there was a major failure in Russian intelligence services, which was a blow to Putin. He was out of sight for nearly a day before resurfacing to make a televised statement about this grave intelligence failure at Crocus Town Hall in Moscow. In his statement, Putin made a rather ludicrous claim, suggesting that Ukraine had facilitated the escape of terrorists across the Russian border in a Renault symbol car. Although FSB agents captured 11 suspects as they fled, the car was stopped near the border with Belarus, only 43 kilometers from the border with Ukraine, which was 118 kilometers away. Ukrainian intelligence sources were skeptical of Putin's initial accusations against Kyiv. They suggested Putin was trying to shift blame using weak arguments, and even mocked the idea of Putin blaming France, since the Moscow attack suspects fled in a Renault brand car. Surprisingly, Putin refrained from directly blaming Ukraine for the attack. This may be because he is concerned about the possibility of the US government possessing information that refutes his claims. Additionally, the shame over the failure of Russian security agencies to act, despite US warnings, may have prevented Putin from accusing Ukraine. This could have negative consequences for Putin and his security services, especially in a country where leaders can be held accountable for their mistakes. The attack, which resulted in the death of at least 137 people, will certainly not be forgotten. There are many questions about the poor security at the attack site, which was an amusement park in a Moscow suburb. It is unclear why the local police did not act more quickly. Although there were 200 security guards present at Crocus Town Hall the night of the attack, some believe the response was inadequate to the circumstances. Some unusual aspects of the attack gave rise to conspiracy theories about possible involvement of parts of the Russian establishment. The ease with which concertgoers managed to enter the building increased the credibility of these theories. One of the terrorists had visited Crocus Town Hall shortly before the attack, but did not raise suspicions. In addition, Moscow's smart city system failed to detect any threat. The slow response of Russian security forces and firefighters drew a lot of attention. According to cameras, it took half an hour for the first flashing lights to arrive at the scene after the shooting was reported, but the authorities who showed up did not seem in a hurry to act. Intervention only occurred long after the attack took place. The strange behavior of the terrorists is also worth mentioning. They took the lives of innocent people for a relatively small amount of money. Local sources suggest the terrorists were well trained, but did not change vehicles upon leaving the capital, something expert professionals might have done. The strange events continued even after the arrest of those responsible for the attack. Just minutes after being detained, a video of the interrogation of the terrorists appeared on Telegram channels. Military experts point out that the interrogation of the main suspect was not broadcasted, but random people among the suspects were included in the video. This raises suspicions that the Russian administration is disseminating videos of interrogations of random detainees to avoid unrest in the country. In addition, timing questions arose related to the detention of the shooters. It was reported that the criminals were detained in the Bryansk region overnight, and the news was shared around 3:30 a.m. However, according to maps, it would take at least 7.5 hours to travel from Krasnogorsk to Bryansk, raising doubts about the 4-hour gap. There are allegations that FSB officers were aware of the situation and were waiting for the shooters in an area near Bryansk. These intriguing details sparked a period of uncertainty in Russia. Citizens began to question whether the Kremlin played any role in the Moscow attacks. What were the views of the Russian government and military sources on the issue? According to Kremlin-controlled sources, Moscow has a cosmopolitan population that could facilitate such attacks. They point out that the city offers opportunities for the recruitment of jihadists among migrants from the former Soviet republics of Central Asia. These migrants play an important role in the economy, performing low-paid jobs that Russians avoid. Putin, in his State of the Nation address, indirectly addressed this issue, softening his previous nationalist rhetoric and highlighting Russia's ethnic diversity. This helped ease tensions between different ethnic groups in the capital and in the Kremlin to some extent, helping to contain divisions in the city. On the other hand, Putin's critics in Russia are more worried about the possibility of the Kremlin exploiting the Moscow attack as a pretext to tighten internal control than about ethnic tensions. They have reasons to think so. Some of his closest allies have already suggested ending Russia's moratorium on the death penalty for terrorism cases. After the Moscow attacks, there could be a shift in this policy. In other words, Putin could use emergency measures or changes in legislation to take tougher decisions within the country. Some Russian bloggers even speculated about the possibility of an attack before elections. In this scenario, blaming Ukraine would be a propaganda ploy, allowing Putin to convince Russians that he is the only answer. Given the Russian leader's tendency to humiliate his rivals, this argument does not seem far-fetched. All of these claims represent terrible scenarios for a country's leader. If proven true, those in power could face legal consequences. However, to prove guilt, the leader needs to be present at critical moments, i.e. Putin. He is known to celebrate public victories but tends to stay away from the spotlight in the face of unexpected setbacks. For instance, after the Kursk submarine disaster in 2000 and the failed Beslan school attack in 2004, Putin was absent for prolonged periods. Last year, when Yevgeny Prigozhin and his mercenary group returned to Moscow, Putin was initially nowhere to be seen. Putin is expected to maintain this approach with regard to the Moscow attack and avoid mentioning it unless absolutely necessary. He may try to reassure Russian citizens only by providing details about the capture of the perpetrators. However, this attack is too grave to be minimized in this way. It is a complete scandal and an alarming signal that security in the country is compromised. This could lead to an increase in the desire to leave Russia, something Putin certainly does not want. As long as uncertainties surrounding the Moscow attack persist, Russia will continue to be an unsafe place. This will likely have impacts on the country's social and political structure. Putin faces significant challenges on all fronts.